Konnichiwa, non-existent viewers. I just got back from seeing Godzilla Minus One. I'm very happy I saw this movie because I remember skipping Shin Godzilla, the last, if I'm not mistaken, that was the last Toho Godzilla film that we got like a few years ago, and I really didn't want to make the same mistake for Godzilla Minus One because I was hearing really great things about it. Godzilla Minus One takes place right after World War II, where Godzilla surfaces after being awakened by nuclear weapons, and he's wreaking havoc on Japan. And the majority of the film focuses on our protagonist, who was supposed to be a kamikaze pilot, and now he has to survive. He and this girl and this little tiny girl they have to look after, and all the villagers have to defend themselves from Godzilla and figure out how to stop him from destroying Japan. I feel like the thing that the best Godzilla films are, in my opinion, whether they be from Toho or Legendary Studios, even Kong Skull Island, because I actually rewatched Kong Skull Island with my dad recently, they all are period pieces with a very anti-war message, because you gotta remember the first Godzilla film, the very first Godzilla film from the 50s was released not even 10 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki was bombed, at the end of World War II. Here in America, we celebrate, the nuclear bombings of those two Japanese cities as that's what ended World War II. The rest of the world views that as a global tragedy. And I've always found it really interesting, seeing that you don't really get many World War II setting films or World War I setting films, not from the American or British perspectives, not from Hollywood studios at least. So it's really interesting seeing films from studios from Japan or Germany or those countries. We get to see the other side's perspective, especially from the civilians' perspective, because remember, World War I was worse for soldiers, World War II was worse for civilians, and you really get the dread. This is this movie, Godzilla Minus One, it pulled off something that I never thought a monster movie could do, and that actually genuinely makes you care for the human characters, and for once, you actually care about who Godzilla stomps or blows to smithereens with his nuclear breath or eats. Godzilla, he does show up kind of infrequently throughout this film, kind of 2014's Godzilla, directed by Gareth Edwards, but when he's on screen, you cannot take your eyes off him. It's oh, Godzilla, please don't kill that person. He just did. And now Godzilla's oh, he's not trying to stop King Ghidorah or, Mechazilla. Now he's just on a war path to just destroy everything. And again, it's important to remember that Godzilla was originally meant to be an allegory for nuclear weapons. And I thought this film, it really touched base on those themes excellently. The film is beautifully shot. The cinematography, the score, it brings back the original, Godzilla score from the original films. And it even took, the similar-ish design to the Showa era Godzilla, back in the super, when Godzilla actors were, wearing the morph suits before CGI was really a thing. Yeah, they took the same design and made it look completely menacing. Like I said, Godzilla, you cannot take your eyes off him whenever he's on screen, and, he's menacing, he's, that he's ready for business. And just the CGI, this film apparently was made on the budget of what is the equivalent of 15 million American dollars. Godzilla's CGI in Godzilla Minus One looks better than so many of these $100-200 million budget blockbuster superhero films I've seen in 2023, and that is saying something. And really the heart and the soul of the film lies with our protagonist, who is a failed kamikaze pilot. It's him, this woman, and this adorable little girl who's orphaned by the Godzilla attacks in the villages, and the scientists, and the soldiers, and the sailors all gotta team up to face Godzilla. I will say, the film, the pacing is much more of a slow burner. It's such a different, unique, feel to a Godzilla, to a monster film that we're so used to, from American studios. I will say this, I do consider, the MonsterVerse films, Godzilla vs. Kong, and, Godzilla King of the Monsters, the more entertaining films. I will say this, Godzilla Minus One as a film, objectively speaking, its artistic value with its writing, its characters, its cinematography, and just the overall themes surrounding the film. It's not as popcorn blockbustery as you might feel it, but I really think that works in the film's favor, because Godzilla Minus One, I'm just trying to keep this review a little straight to the point, definitely gets an 8 out of 9 stars. It's a shoe film, which for those of you who don't know, the word shoe is where we get the term S tier from, with tier lists. Yeah, S tier derives from the Japanese word shu, which means for excellent or superb or supreme. I know they're totally different studios and franchises, but this film made me even more excited for Godzilla X Kong, and it's any list of greatest film franchises of all time is really just not complete without the Godzilla franchise. So let me know in the comments down below, what is your favorite film franchise of all time? What's your pick for the best film franchise? Or you could give me like a little list. It could be like Godzilla, James Bond, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, MCU, whatever else. Let me know in the comments down below. Subscribe to my channel, please. You guys have a good night and stay beastly.